Hi everyone, Francesco Deugemo Lombardo here, your Italian favorite esports reporter. First of all, this is my first video in English for a bigger audience, so please forgive me in advance for my language mistakes. I swear I'll improve, but for now, just sorry. So, I sat down with Michael Archer, best known as Veteran, one of the leading figures in the League of Legends competitive scene in Europe and internationally, and one of the most experienced. Former coach for H2K and Schalke04, caster, analyst, his knowledge of the game is far beyond of many. In this conversation we talked about LIT, League of Legends Italian tournament, discussing the new league, the players, the different playstyles, and how much good or bad we are in Italy. In the second part of the talk we spoke about the EMEA Masters that is starting today, the chances of Macko and Dsyre, and the expected meta of the tournament. Spoiler, yes, we live in a Jinx World. Enjoy the interview and have a good time. So, welcome to all. We are here in this, you don't know, but it's night for us, and you will discover, it, and maybe or maybe not. I'm Deugemo, and I'm here with the Veteran, person that I think and I hope you all already know. How are you? How's it going?
I'm doing good. I just saw the Prime League Grand Finals. Which was the final Grand Finals that was played alongside the Greek Grand Finals. So as of now, all of the teams and all of the seeds, importantly, are fully locked in.
Yeah, and we already heard about the EMEA Masters draw that has been set. But we will talk about it in the next minutes. First of all, I will talk with you about LIT, the League Italian tournament, the new branded Italian tournament. You have, I hope, the pleasure. I hope it was a pleasure to co-stream this the grand final of LIT. What do you think about LIT as a product? What was your thoughts while you?
Yeah. I mean, first off, because I did just watch the Prime League Grand Finals, and I did really enjoy it, and really hats off to everybody involved in the production. But the immediate lack of venue was very that. It was very loud to me, right? Because Ultra Liga did have a venue. And you guys were really geared up. And what I do like with all the ERLs right now is including all of these watch parties happening everywhere as well. And you guys also had that element. So I did really like your production. I did really like how you added in those kinds of regional areas where other people had their own lit watch parties and stuff. I thought that was a really cool.
And that's a thing that only exists in Italy right now from Riot, the Riot Club. Just the beta test. Italy is now the beta testing for this Riot Play Club. I hope that will.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the. I think that the new community manager for Italy brought for when he for Italy and proposed it to Riot in Europe. Italy right now is beta testing about it, and I hope it will be everywhere at least in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. Also, the production itself was ridiculously smooth. Usually with transition into LAN, you'll normally see a lot of problems because it will be first time in particular setups. But here, there was no such problem with your final whatsoever, right? Ultra Liga finals had a fairly intense delay when they switched to a different LAN environment for grand finals. They had 5 pauses in the first 8 minutes, and then they ended up having an hour-long pause into resetting the whole thing and all that stuff. Yours silky smooth, actually, silky smooth.
Talking about the final, the grand final of LIT, we saw Macko and Dsyre. Did you follow the league in the previous phases, regular season, or What do you think
I
about
watched Legacy.
the level, the competitive level of Lit in this split?
There's an interesting area where I actually think your jungle pool is getting very, very, very strong compared to a lot of other regions, and I think that really showed in how the map play happened in the grand finals. Especially there was a particular set of decisions in the first game where I think, which one was it? So I think it was Dsyre were playing behind on Herald, and then Herald was dropped topside by Matchco. But you had on bot lane just the Aphelios from Dsyre just absolutely ramming bot tier 2 and being able to get tempo off it rather than a hurried match to try to match the Herald. And for me, it was like, this is already side lane play that puts you instantly above, say, Ultra Liga, for example, right? And I can think of a lot of like Prime League teams that weren't actually doing this sort of thing, which is why I thought Austrian Force Wilhelm would do better there. A lot of Spanish teams don't necessarily do it. Like Garçones would not do those kinds of plays, right? Those don't really factor into their understanding of the map. So there's actually like a deeper map understanding at the Italian league that you don't really see in any ERL. I think only Ruddy are showing in the minor leagues. GK are kind of showing it in the Arabian League. They are actually pretty strong on the map. But like, for example, Supermassive over in TCL, they are almost entirely winning off of team fights. So like you guys would have Dsyre matching that, but like Matchco have really, really good timings, and Dsyre do play map tempo off those timings as well. So it's not like Dsyre don't have an idea of this. I do think this all stems from the fact that the jungle level overall in Italy, outside those two teams, is also really high. And some of that is also coming from Italians. Like, obviously, Kikis is like a big name that I could immediately bring up as being like, okay, this guy's doing well, this guy's doing good. But I'm honestly thinking about players like Eagle, for example. Eagle actually has ridiculously good timings around the map. I actually think he has better timings than the jungle part of a lot of the of the two grand finalists. He has a good idea of when he should be on those timings, but he is not necessarily executing the manner in which he should there, right? If that makes sense. Like, his top laner is getting priorities at those points as well. But then when push comes to shove, there is a lack of synergy that they obviously tried to make up for by adding Fat Benny later on, and I do think that was a really good addition to the team. But that was the guy I was looking at. I was like, this guy has the right idea, right? He's already above a lot of junglers who don't necessarily have the right idea and are going for like really, really deep runs in their respective regions. But he's on, like, his team did not do very well at all. Like, I think they were like joint 10th. But he's doing good. And I'm looking at like a 10th place team, right? And he is a full Italian guy. But he, like, I liked watching him. Or like, you have another Italian jungler,
Ryujin
yes.
in the Eco Academy.
Apologies if I absolutely butchered his name, but
Don't
like
worry.
that guy, like, I wouldn't necessarily call him like a timing guy, right? Like a full map timing guy, but his reactions whenever an enemy was ahead on the map, which like for example against Matchco, was really, really, really good by him. Like, he would immediately trade generally for bot plays whenever an enemy was doing those top purple plays, and he would know how to transition those timings into another invade on the other side on the next reset, unless he was like behind on those resets. So if the enemy jungler was really, really on point, you could get ahead of Ryujin, but if the enemy jungler was not on point, Ryujin was already quite ahead on these kinds of like picks and camps and all this sort of stuff. And it's like there's a lot of potential there. And again, we're looking at like the lower level. So I do think you have a really good map understanding, and you've had to have it because even at the lowest level, the map is a thing that Italian teams are thinking about, and you don't see that in other minor leagues. It doesn't exist.
It's a good point of view right now, because for the first time the split in the elite we saw none of the bottom 4 teams we won against the top 4 teams. It's the first time, never happened before. But what you're saying is very interesting, because through this fact, this statistic, The thing is that we in Italy, we players, of course, and teams, coaching staffs, know about how to play League of Legends. Maybe there are some mechanics that are not the top, not the best, but the theory is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I actually do think the theory is okay. Like, at least the attempts are being had, even if the execution isn't there mechanically, right? Like you are just saying there.
Yes.
Like, how many games did they have where Ryujin's able to find those angles on bot and just get like Tyrone really far ahead, for example, right? And then obviously in the team fights doesn't quite go so hot, right? But like, for example, I loved when Fat Benny's edition, the big difference between Fat Benny and the previous guy whose name began with R, I can't remember now. But the big difference between him and that guy was Fat Benny was like, he was going all in, right? Like, if he thought that there was an opening for him to isolate someone, boom, straight in. Now, he might die for it. But for me, it's like, I'd rather the over-aggressive player, right? And it was like, they weren't completely reliant on Eagle anymore on that team, right? To start those fights, which it did feel like it was beforehand. So the idea is there, and I've always cared much more about the intention than the execution, because I feel like if your team has the right intention, the execution does necessarily come with time.
Another thing that I will talk with you about is Atleta that scored the record for the first time. A team elite went 13-0 in the first 13 matches. Never happened before. Then they lost the last game in the regular season with the Dsyre, but again, when best of 5 comes, they lose both with against Dsyre first and Macko then. In your experience, how much changes the thing change between regular season, that it's best of 1, and then best of 5, when I think all change?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some critical things that change. Like, for example, we just saw, because obviously I just watched Prime. Well, wait, first off, there's a heresy going on here that I do need to address, okay? This is Italian wine, it's Gavi, all right? It is a white wine. I had a version of this. This isn't the exact brand that I had, but I did have a version of this during the grand finals. I am definitely acquiring a taste for Italian wine. That is what I'm going to have the whole time. I do always insist on being allowed to drink during interviews, so I do thank you for accommodating that. I also figured it was good to show a bit of this. But I did just have some of that in the in Prime League, because in Prime League, Eintracht Spandau just made a massive run from the lowest of the lower bracket all the way to the finals, and then just won the finals. And I had a golden rule as this was happening, which is that the more conservative players play, the better Power of Evil is to have on your team, right? So if everyone's playing scared, Power of Evil is a great player to have, not because he doesn't get scared, but because he has the tendency of only doing damage if he thinks he cannot be damaged at all, you know? Like, it's an all or nothing kind of guy. And if the whole game goes slow,
it's a sort of a trade-off. I go if I know that I not damaged. Okay.
Yes, but if the game gets really like, so the game's really fast, right? PoE is not going to react properly to all of those individual instances. He's going to wait for the perfect opportunity, but those are being chipped away over time. But when the game gets really slow, now no one's losing HP, we can wait for the perfect moment, and PoE was born to do that. So he gets better the further into a tournament you get, in my opinion. Like, Game 5 is just a PoE favored state, in my opinion, because Game 5s are always just nothing happens, 5-minute long team fight at Baron, you know? And that's generally how Game 5s go in the ERLs, at least. And so PoE is perfect for that sort of an environment. And I think when you get to BO5, when the pressure gets on, every game matters. There are expectations behind you. Players do lean more into these kinds of conservative stances. You do get these slower games, and that can change the makeup of which team is favored. Scaling champions generally become the favored thing at the World Championships. That's partly because it is a really viable way to play the game, but also because everyone will naturally move into a state where they're not punishing with smaller trades as much, going for those less likely to get a kill plays. They're only really doing plays to burn summoners and then in towards winning team fights. And so I think if you're playing a team like Atleta, where they probably felt very, very free to play reactive states, like if the enemy is vaguely out of position, they're happy to go in and skill check them and blah, blah, blah. But when push comes to shove, when you get to the playoffs, the enemy isn't going to give you those kinds of opportunities as much because they don't want to throw it here. You know, it's now or never. I'm not going to go for that much of a risky play. And that can immediately change the tone. And if you've been going fast for an entire split, that's gonna mess you up, right? That is gonna mess you up.
Definitely.
But I do also think there is an element here where it's like, if I look at all of these lineups and I just try to isolate like the two really important parts of like a team fight, say everything's going slow and everything gets decided in team fights, Slowq Zamulek is the best like mid bot, right?
Yes.
Like it is the best mid bot in the league in terms of those team fights. And so the whole game's going slow and it's all going to get decided in those team fights. I like Sebex a lot, right? And I do like Piok as well. I have seen him play over the years, but I do bet on Zamulek there. I definitely bet on Slowq there. Obviously, his game 4 and 5 are basically two legendary mid lane games now. And yeah, so I think when you get into that slow environment, that's what you're looking at. And so it becomes less of a surprise that this happened. It's more of a surprise that Matchco were able to pull off the run that they did, to be honest.
Yeah, Macko rebuild almost the entire rosters. Only Click remains of the last years, the only one. And I sincerely put the Macko for third, fourth place, at least in this spring split, because I thought it's a rebuild that aim to go for the title or try to go for the title for summer, definitely not in spring. And then they exceeded in some way, exceeded the our thoughts. You mentioned, I mentioned to Click that I read some days ago. It will be the eighth times he at EMEA Masters.
Yeah,
it's a record right now. I guess, but we always in Italy saying that Click deserves LEC.
okay.
It's true. It's not. It's too late now. Maybe he reached his top level when he is not that young.
So the age thing is a weird one because there has been like a pushback on the current rookies that have moved in with MDK on the fact that they are older, right? They are like 24, 25, etc., etc. For me, when it comes to the age thing, that's naturally going to occur when you have two particular things, which is a narrow tier 1 and a wide tier 2. And when you have those two things, the existence of a wide tier 2 immediately raises the point that a wide tier 2 is capable of financially existing. So you likely have some stability in the ecosystem if you have a wide tier 2 at all. Korea has a narrow tier 2 with like 10 teams and a narrow tier 1 with 10 teams.
Okay.
So given that you have this, you are going to have to cycle X amount more players out before you can get people coming up from tier 2 than you would otherwise. There are 11 regions. You basically need 11 times. I know a bunch of them have 8 teams, but just bear with me here. Let's just say like 9 times. You need like 9 times the amount of rotation from the shearing off from the top of EU before you can have like a proper system moving up where people are moving up at the age of like 18, etc. And that's just never going to happen. There aren't enough slots.
Yeah,
so what will have to occur is that the average age of people in your stable tier 2, because it has to be stable if you have a wide tier 2, is going to increase, right? The average age must increase because they must be staying there longer. It's viable to stay there as a job at all. And so in doing so, you are going to end up with 24, 25, 26, all the way up to 30-year-old Kasing, right? At the EMEA Masters his 30s. You will end up with that because the LEC does not have enough slots to accumulate, to accommodate every good player in
Exactly.
EMEA Masters, right? And then the second thing you have to recognize is, okay, we have 25-year-olds in the ERLs, right? We have a decent amount of them. If an 18-year-old comes in and has the game knowledge, because this is
and we're waiting for Calist.
Yeah, like I mean, like, but if an 18-year-old comes in, right, and has the game knowledge to defeat a 25-year-old who has also been playing since 18, right, something's gone horribly wrong, right? Like, you should expect
I agree.
the 18-year-old to get pummeled, right? Just because the 25-year-old's in the ERLs doesn't mean he stopped learning League of Legends. That's just a fiction, right? So also, the amount of 18-year-old quote-unquote prodigies that are going to carry your map up in the LEC, or are the best prospects to do that, is also going to shrink. It must necessarily shrink, unless we are playing a game that is not knowledge-based, but this is a knowledge-based game. So the average age that you want to be bringing into LEC does also increase. That's the part people are having a problem with right now. They don't want to accept that not only are we recruiting older people into the LEC, but that's actually a sign of health in the system that we are doing that. They are the better choices. They should be the better choices. And we need to accept that they are the better choices to do so. I don't think age should be a factor in why Click doesn't get there. I think the fact that we can prepare a player for so long is a good thing, and we should stop acting like the fact we don't have 18-year-olds coming in non-stop is a bad thing, because how else is this ever going to play out economically? It must go up. It must. This is just a fact of the reality. The Koreans, only 10 slots in the tier 2 and only 10 slots in the tier 1, and their top gets shaved off by something ours doesn't. Everyone imports Koreans, so their tier 1 gets shaved off all the time, so they can cycle their talent in, and they don't import. They refuse to do so they can keep cycling their talent in, so they can keep cycling their talent up, right? You see how that works? That's why the Koreans still have those 18-year-old prodigies, because they have to go in earlier, right? And there aren't enough slots there to have a really, really long career in tier 2, so they have to retire earlier. We don't have that problem in the ERLs, so we naturally have a higher age overall, and those guys are still learning the game, so they will be able to outplay your 18-year-old kids, unfortunately. And Click has done that consistently in the Italian league. He's always been able to have a team built around his capabilities, and I think there's something for the fact that you know Click. Click is a known quantity. We know how he plays, so we also know how to build a team around him that should do really, really well with him. The surprising thing about the Matchco one is it doesn't have the big element that literally every other Click lineup has had, which is a very active map jungler, right? Normally Click is the secondary engage to an insane primary engage jungler, but Lotus is not really that, but the timings remained, which means that Click has learned all those timings from all of those junglers, right? This was a more surprising one, and it's a really good sign of Click's development, and you can develop as a 26-year-old, right? Like,
and of course, because Click, he's a former jungler. He in the first he started as a mid laner.
I did not know.
Yeah. I can assure you. Click started as a mid laner in 2014 maybe, but it doesn't last longer. Then he switched to with Team Forge. He switched to jungler. He played the jungler for 2-3 years maybe. Then he switched again to support, And the new thing for Click this spring split was that he was the shot caller of the team. He went more
So
vocal.
then he did learn them.
Yeah,
that
he went more vocal. Based on the previous splits, and this is why I spoke with the esports manager of Macko, Corax, and he told me that the player that improved more for him was right click for those things about him.
So I just want to point out to everyone, so you can see that type of stuff just by seeing in-game, because there's this thing people keep telling me, which is you can't possibly tell that sort of stuff by looking at game stuff, but you can, so long as you have watched the history of the player, right? And Click for me was always like, he is the secondary engage, and he's definitely comes in second to his junglers. And something about Click, I've always wondered if Click ever had like a say in his lineups, is that Click was always paired with an insane map jungler, right? So C-Boy, he's had 3 different times on 3 different lineups, right? And C-Boy is a very aggressive, acceleration jungler, I like to call him. He tries to make picks in jungle, get kills in lanes. He will give up CS to do one of these things because he wants to get tempo there. He's also played with Ekkas, who for me is one of the best camp advantage junglers. Nowadays, I guess you'd say a mini Milky Way, right? That's how he likes to play, right? Okay. He has that very clear idea until Attila bullies him out of his team. Taxer is much more binary. He basically picks a side of the map and focuses all tempo there, but he leads in that regard, right? Soft, even to an extent, does all of this. The Soft Ho lineup that wasn't necessarily as successful as the other ones I'm talking about, but still had those very same strengths. I also think the fact that Kerberos can be one of those very vocal players means it's going to be very topside focused. But the thing that matters is that Click is kind of he's playing to someone else's fife, right, for the whole of his career, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the fact that you can play within those teams, it's just a knowledge that you have to have when you have the player, and you can build a good team around him. But then with Lotus, it's I'm not flaming Lotus, but I see color Lotus, Nano, Odie, and it's I don't see the leader on the team, right? And then come to playoffs, come to finals, all of those timings are there, right? The timings that the other junglers were definitely calling on the Drake, on the Herald, on the camps, those are there. He's doing a neutral objective based one, so he's doing the map one, not the camp advantage one Ekkas does. But all the timings are back. So where is this coming from? And this time, Click is no longer the secondary engage. Now, he had some banger moments. Let's not pretend he was perfect, right? I remember a very distinct moment where I think it was on
no one
Malphite, and you can see the Viego, whatever you call the weird ghost shroud thing around the Drake there, and he chooses that moment to just walk out while his jungler's doing red, and he just gets caught and just seared into my head, and it's I mean, you're trying. I love that you're trying, but it's clearly he's taking this new role. At 26, this should prove to people you can keep developing. I don't think, because you asked me, has Click hit his peak? I don't think Click's hit his peak. I think his peak is going to be whatever comes from this new Click that's clearly taking a primary role on his team rather than the secondary role he's had most of his career. The best parts of Click's career are yet to come.
Very nice. I hope for him. He deserves. He deserves it definitely. Linked to Click, we have really a few Italians in lit. I don't know. Do you think is a issue for?
That's always an interesting one.
Yeah, I know, because import. I know just one thing. I know that import players help the local players maybe to improve, to know better. Not always, but sometimes. But we have a very lack of Italian players then to
Yes.
to choose for
I mean,
teams.
I take a weird, I don't take a neutral ground. So I have two kind of like conflicting ideas on this that I haven't been able to resolve.
Okay.
So first off, when it comes to Tier 1 League, I am famously anti-import, right? Like
Yeah, sure.
I don't like the tendency GMs have, and are public about, by the way, having this idea that if you pick like any Korean from like Tier 2 or from high up in the ladder, they're automatically going to be able to match like European players. I think there's so many things wrong with that, right? First off, you have a specific role in mind for a player when you take them in. You can't know that with the Korean, right? I also don't think that when we import the Koreans, we do right by them. I have another interview coming out soon where I talk about the football system when they import Brazilians, etc.
Yeah.
Agents are professional relocators in that regard, and there are so many factors there that we don't even vaguely consider in esports, and it really annoys me, right? Like, players are not plug and play in this game. We just had a very long conversation about Click's development and like aspects of how he works with his team. And how he's developing in that regard. And it's like, if you can't have that kind of conversation about a player, I don't think you can know that they are right for your team. And so if you're just automatically importing from like another region and your only communication with them is just the agent, you're not going to get the full story. Wisdom was a really good example of this, right? M&S is a very recent example of the same thing, right? For me, Photon was like a really lucky gamble because I think Photon is phenomenal. Right, but for me, literally for me, and this will probably be the most controversial thing I say, I think only Photon and Dreams from SK Gaming years and years ago. I think those are the only two imports I've looked at and thought these are definitely the best things they could have done at the time, right? Without moving into like the ERL, right? Like if you don't move into ERL, I do think that these are literally the best things you can do at the time.
And Photon became the carry of Vitality for definitely.
He's also my argument against importing Thanatos by the way. As a very tiny aside, I'll spend 10 seconds of this. When people ask me if they should import Thanatos, I'm like, bro, Photon, like the best case scenario, Thanatos is as good as Photon. Photon also went 10th with Bow and Upset. I don't think it's worth. Okay, that's not the role you want to import for, in my opinion, unless you can get the guy Giga G. But anyway, my point is North America really went all in on this. And unlike Europe, they had the money to do so. So the best thing that happened to Europe is that we weren't rich enough to compete with North America for the same imports. So North America was able to take them all in a way we weren't. This annihilated the Tier 2 scene, right? I remember having multiple conversations with loads of NA talent at the time, and I still had some afterwards when I became an agent and all of this, but there was just much less of them, where all the mid laners are pretty much universally saying, I'm looking to Volsop to support anyway, because you can't get a job as a mid laner. Only Pobelter. Pobelter was the only mid laner in the LCS at the time. Oh, so if you're a mid laner climbing up the ladder, you're just being told there is no place for you, right? They know, and everyone kind of knew Pobelter was a placeholder until they could get like another green card and then add another Korean. Everyone knew that at best they were placeholders. This killed the Tier 2 scene in North America. Mid's not the only role it killed, right? Those mids role swap to support. Now the supports are stopping, right? Because why would I do this when they're gonna grab a role swap mid lane like Busio, for example, right? So I think this is a big factor when it comes to imports people don't think, which is the impact it has on Tier 2. Tier 2 guys are not thinking, great, I'm going to get to move up and get taught by an imported player. They're thinking, great, there isn't really a position for me there by and large. And the very few that think, I'm going to get up, be the exception, and import two great players. Like, I've had so many conversations with players where I've been like, you do understand that guy is just going to ask to replace you, right? Because that is what's going to happen. He's going to ask to replace him, and every time without fail, it ends up happening, right? They are basically one or two splits away from changing their mind on that. You don't want to do that because there's a similar conversation happening in Arabian scene. There was a big business there was a big business call that was broadcast on Twitch with about 8 people there, including owners, including the Riot liaison, including one player that definitely needed a bit more PR before he went in, and like a bunch of people like this having the conversation. When the import stuff came up, there was a big divide, and I like to see that there was a divide on this between like, we need the imports to like do something, and then no, if you do that, how are we going to get any Arabian League players again? They're at least conscious of the fact that like, why would the Arabian League players try so hard in tier 2 if they think they're just going to get replaced or be a placeholder at best in tier 1, right? And I think you can apply this to Italian League. Like, when you see a full, like, I will admit I was guilty of this. I like, personally, a lot of the players on Atleta. I really did want to see it fail. Like, I really did want to see it fail. At least have Click be the champion kind of deal, right? For Italy. And yet, this is the contradictory part. I care so much about the LEC being as good as it possibly can be and us doing as good as we can at Worlds that I don't want import restrictions between ERLs, because I want to try to create the best rosters possible. And the unique thing about Italy is your upper end can pay and outbid for those lineups, and you're not restricted in scrims with other regions, kind of. I mean, really you are, when it comes down to the reality of it, because people will devalue like a full Italian lineup versus a full import lineup. But I would rather just get like the best teams in each individual league, and I don't think importing a Polish player is the same thing as importing a Korean, because they're all on the same server.
Yes,
they're all on the same server, playing off each other. They're known quantities. That was the big thing earlier, is that it's not a known quantity when you grab the Korean, but it is a known quantity in its entirety when you do grab Kikis, right? So I don't want those import restrictions, but I do want you guys to back up Italian players, because I don't want to lose the pool of Italian players. I don't want Italy and Italians in general to suddenly think, why bother, right? Why bother? Because I see a player like Eagle, and I think you could be seriously good. And then in the back of my head, there's like, are you even going to get that support from your own countrymen? And I feel like from the audience, 100% he will. But like, are you going to get a position in a major Italian team when they could just grab like Kikis like they've just done, or maybe in the future Blue Azor, someone like this is doing really well that might be within their budget. Chef, for example, in TCL is doing really well right now. Importing Turks is all the rage. Maybe they look to do that, right? And it's like that's why I brought him up. Like, I think that guy is really good. And I think you guys should promote Italian talent. And I think Italians should play League of Legends, because there's no way that you guys can't be as good at the game as a Polish person, as a Danish person, as a Spanish person, as a French person. For sure you can be, right? And I do want the league to support that, even if I don't want to restrict the league to do that, because I do want to grab the best players every year. I've not quite been able to resolve that conflict.
It's not easy. It's not easy to solve that. I know. I can understand it. What do you think about the you told something about the LAN the LAN event at the start of this conversation, but do you think it's something that a LAN event is something that should be mandatory for a tournament organizer in the ERL, or the cost, the economic cost of a LAN, it's just too much right now, and it's not easy for budget issues?
I mean, I think the appetite is there for it, right? I do think you can get the money back for it, and I do think we need to decide, like Riot needs to decide there, and is this to make money or not? Because they do famously say they go into debt for this every year. I would prefer LANs, because something that I like to remind people of over the years is that, like, your typical LVP LFL player has done more LANs than, say, an LEC player did.
We have the LFL days.
Yes.
During the season, not just for the final, but during the season.
Yes, exactly. You have that with LVP as well. You used to have that with Prime League more. I do want more of that, because I think having LAN experience on these ERL players is great, especially if you have a wide tier 2, and as a result of that, they're going to stay here a lot longer. LAN days are a necessity, in my opinion, and there was a point when COVID was happening and everything was happening at the studio, etc., where ERL players were actually playing in these big stadiums because those LFL LVP LAN days were happening in stadiums. They did more of that than most LEC players were doing. Right? They had more LAN experience. I kept having to correct people on this. That no, they're not going to choke on stage. They're less likely than your current crop to be choking on stage. They have played bigger audiences than most LEC players have at that point, right? And I think that needs to be secured. That needs to keep going. And I think the system you guys had of those watch parties that you said Riot was testing on you proves the appetite for it. Those are people that want to go meet other Italians who love League of Legends, support their Italian teams in a real life event. They will 100% make the trip to go to a stadium, to go to a big event, to go to a big venue. 100%.
So let's go to the EMEA Masters finally. Spring split. We had the draw of the play-in stage, and from Italy, from the elite in the play-ins, we will have Macko Esports. That of course they picked up Entropic because it's obvious every time Entropic will fight with an Italian team, it's every EMEA Masters. It's unbelievable. So Macko picked up Entropic from Hitpoint Masters and B5 from EBL, and finally a one-man army from ESL Benelux Elite Series from Benelux. Do you think it's has been a good draw for Macko Esports?
I'm really interested in how Spooky ends up performing, because I think Spooky is actually a big part of Entropic's system. For me, by the way, that is the team that Macko need to watch out for, right? With Spooky, Manny, Denek, and Strode was doing really, really well in their games as well. The bot lane was doing insanely well. So for me, it's like the bot lane's doing well, the jungler's doing well, and these are the two big critical points of how Macko are able to be on timings. Like even Odie was able to find map states where he was able to get tempo for the team. So the fact that Entropic have strengths in those two particular areas, that could be a bit worrying. But when it comes to the actual playing of the side lane for tempo, Macko definitely have a much better understanding of it than Entropic do. Spooky though being ahead on a lot of these particular timings could pose an issue, because Click is now the dominant guy when it comes to that, rather than Lotus, rather than previously Seaboy, right? Previously Echoes, previously Soft, previously any of these guys. So Click is the guy that needs to be really on point here. He needs to make sure that Strode, Denik don't annihilate them in the 2v2 on bot lane, and Click's never being like a sick laner. That's never really been his forte. His best periods as a laner has always been when he's on lane-based champs, right? Like Karma, for example. I think like his first 2020 split, I want to say, maybe 2021 was almost exclusively enchanters, like Karma, Lulu, all of this type of stuff.
Maybe 2021.
And I think the EMEA Masters he did best at was when him and what was his name? Oh god, he's a known guy, but he was on Scion on this one. Oh god, Gooby.
Gooby, okay.
Was on Scion. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to recall this all in my head. Scion itself probably could have done with more issues, but I was thinking like this guy is a better AD carry than he is a support in some ways, when it came to Click's performance on the Senna. So I think when it comes to those range champions, and there are ways to do that on bot lane right now, that might be a way for Click to get around potential issues in the 2v2. And yet at the same time, I want him to be there on timings, right? So maybe he should go onto the more engaged champions and just not to Korean advice you, just play better, right? But this is the testing grounds for the new Click, right? For Click's development in this regard. He needs to do well in the 2v2, and he needs to make sure his team is on point on the timings, because he is now the guy for that, right? He's the leadership figure, right? He's 20. According to you, he's 26 years old, and he's definitely now in that leadership. Definitely on the map, though. No matter what, that he is that guy for them, right? And he is the reason they were able to get to 5 games.
What about the because if we see the other enemies, the other opponents of Macko in the EMEA Masters playing, we got B5 where there is a double aim. That is Old Glory, or maybe not. I don't know how to classify him in the ERL circuit. But it's a well-known player for sure. There is, and a one-man army from Elite Series. Maybe a one-man army would be the easy one on this group.
I will give you. So first of all, I'll be really, really honest immediately and say that I haven't watched the specific. I haven't watched EBL yet. EBL is like my big blind spot right now. I have 2 days to prevent it being my blind spot, which is more than enough time.
You can do it.
I have a system for this. I can easily do it.
Okay.
One-man army is going to be almost impossible if you talk about, because I've seen Wind in solo queue. I have seen him in solo queue, but beyond that, I don't really have much there. On B5 though, like almost all of their players I do recognize. Double Aim actually used to be a really good friend of mine, and Tibor is actually a phenomenal laner. And I'm very, very interested in Tibor's matchup, for sure. But Double Aim is also a complete map jungler. Like he's more of like an Ekkas kind of player if you want to go back in Click's history, right? So that will be a testing ground for Click for sure, like 100%. And I'm interested in Nano versus Tibor. Nano versus Tibor, I think it's going to be better than Nano versus Many. Tibor is very, very underrated by the wider community, but I do think he is a fantastic all-in player. And I think that even though Slowq had his way with Nano was one of the big reasons why Game 1 was close at all in the grand finals, right? Yes. I actually think he had a really, really good sense of what to do there, and then it just kind of collapsed in lane on the J-Sari game. But I do want to see like his redemption, particularly into Tibor. I think that's a really, really good test for him, one that he can step up for, but I do need to see him step up, because Tibor double aim, that's a scary 2v2 jungle, in my opinion. And if they win anything, it's through there. Click, on the other hand, should have an easier time. I think Click on bot lane will be an easier sell in this matchup. And then I expect him, well, he then needs to outbrain double aim, right? That's what he needs to do. He needs to outbrain double aim. And he needs to back up Nano. I expect him to get out of lane there much easier than against Hitpoint Masters guys, than against Entropic.
I hope you're right. We need a second Italian team in the group stage of EMEA Masters.
Macko have already surprised you guys once, right? They can do it again, right? Like I see the route. Like there is definitely the route out for sure, 100%.
Last split, Macko reached the top 4 in the EMEA Masters.
Yes.
Maybe they could even. I mean, I don't think they could win against Movistar Riders last split, but they definitely could have played better that day. I know that day players didn't. Weren't very well, but do you think it's just was just luck last year, last split, or it has been the result of a long journey of Macko about we want to get there, we will be there, and they did.
Well, A-City was one of the most phenomenally undervalued top laners in all of the ERLs. I think that guy was actually like a top 3 top laner in that season. Especially, I mean, obviously if you gave him Gangplank, they gave it to someone.
Of course.
Which happened way
A-City is Gangplank.
I mean, there was literally one of the teams there. I was talking with them and giving advice. I was just like, just make sure you ban Gangplank, like, for sure, as one of them. And they were like, yeah, we'll do it. They didn't do it. It was actually insane. And they were like, no, we actually thought the composition we had would be good into it. It's like, there are delusions people have. Anyway, this shouldn't be about a City Gangplank, but I do think he was phenomenally undervalued. A lot of what they ended up doing was based around early priorities. The City got on top side into invades. C-Boy, obviously, you've talked about being a complete map jungler. But the big surprise for me on that lineup was VZZ's performance. That guy was one of the best AD carry laners in the whole tournament. Genuinely.
Oh, okay.
Like he wiped out Super in one of the games he had against him, and I'm pretty sure he had a similar performance into Exakick as well. I think he had like Exakick and Crowny maybe in his no, sorry. He had, I'm pretty sure at one point. Let me see. Which one? There was another guy other than Super that he like absolutely wrecked. And it's the name escapes me now, but he was one of the best laners in that whole tournament for sure. I do remember the 2v2s into Super, and he was doing really well in them. That guy is currently undervalued because he had those great performances, and I'm not seeing him on like top LVP, top LFL, and that is really sad to see. But when you have those two factors in, right, and you have a complete map jungler in C-Boy with a pre-existing working system with Click, because C-Boy Click had worked together like on 2 different lineups before this one, it's like, how is that not set up to succeed? Like at that point, the last guy left 6-10. How is he not going to develop well when the whole rest of the map is working like clockwork? That was one of the best roster constructions that I've seen. I'm not sure how much they knew about VZZ's true potential, because that, again, for me, is like the big surprise. But with that, both side lanes are basically perpetually winning. How can 610 not develop into the good player that he ended up becoming? Though he did lose me money with that Tristana W once, and if he's watching, he knows exactly what I mean. But like that, like I think that was, if there was like a long process to that, it was a long process of sobriety regarding what Click is really good at and what kind of a team to build around Click, because Click has been the focal point for Matchco lineups, right?
Yes.
And I think they rested enough on their laurels and grabbed enough strong participants for that particular system that lineup could only succeed. And yeah, I mean, this time they don't have the same pieces at all, but Click has like learned enough.
Not yet, at least.
Right? Yeah, I mean, well, I think this Matchco's success will not be based on imitating the previous lineups. It will be by creating new strengths with Click's development, right? And if Click finds himself comfortable in this particular role, maybe you build an entirely different team in, say, 2025 around the new Click that you have there.
Talking about Dsyre, we will see them in the EMEA Masters in the next phase, directly in the next phase,
yes.
in the group stage.
The team fighters.
Yeah, you already talk about Slow Q, about Rilech. I don't know how the Rilech. He wants to be spelled about Rilech. What are the strengths and weaknesses of Dsyre that maybe we could see in the grand finals that Macko exploited in the grand finals?
Well, they're big. Wait, hang on a second. Oh yeah. My god. Wait, 1 second. Sorry, I went back to check who it was that he was killing Khalees. Yeah, okay. There were Khalees. I know. And then Voxney was in the same one. Yeah, but them like they need to just ban Gangplank. Just ban Gangplank. Anyway. Yeah, so okay, Dsyre are phenomenal team fighters from Zamulek and Slowq. If they have an issue, it's because Rylek seems to think everything is a fight. And you see them brought into Rylek's madness every now and again, which can be quite entertaining to see. But like if Rylek played like a little bit slower, I do feel like that team would look.
Maybe sometimes he's too much aggressive or too much
like on Volibear, he
faster on what he have to do. Yeah, he have to play slower.
he's doing, like, he is finding good invade timings, but for him it's never a case of play slow, play back a bit until we have all of the cooldowns burned that we need to. Like, Garsonas are really effective at specifically doing that. It's always a case of we fight now, right? If I burn cooldowns, I've done my job, you know? Especially on Volibear. I think Volibear reveals all of Rylek's kind of like worst traits. He plays very fast. I don't want to make this like full Rylek flame or something like that, but when I do notice things going bad, it's generally like Rylek's gone really, really aggro on an invade. We've all had to join on that. This could be like a potential issue. At the same time, I have seen Rylek get insane catches that have turned the game around for the team. Right? Yes. Like it's a double-edged sword there. Really depends how you want to be honestly, I feel like with their team fighters, having a guy that just wants to go in all of the time can be really, really advantageous to you. But then I also think, do I want this guy messing up my map state when I'm against a team that's more controlled overall, right? How would this work against K-Corp Blue, right? K-Corp Blue is basically mini Milky Way and his 4 slaves. If Rylek tries to do this, Khalees is 100% there, right? Flesh is 100% there, right? And you are there. Right, they will do everything for camp advantage on that team. Right, they are not isolated, and if Rylek keeps doing that, I could see it potentially being an issue against a team like that. Right, I don't necessarily. I mean, we're not going to know the full group that they are until the end of playing, so it's kind of pointless like trying to address that particular part. But this for me is like the potential issue with them. They're not as strong on timings as Matchco, right? They would often come in second on those timings to Matchco and then try to play lane or Rylek tries to find a catch, right? But they would win those fights. They would win those fights because Slowq is a phenomenal team fighter, and Zamulek is born and raised in this environment. I don't know if you watched him on IHG, back in Polish League, but when he was on IHG, the run that they did from the lower bracket to the finals into Game 5 was insane. There were multiple games where they were 10k gold down and they'd win the game anyway. Remember there was one game where they were legit 10k gold down against Gangplank and Victor and they won the game. Like they won the game again. It's impossible. Like, no, they managed to do it. Eschik was the mid laner on that team, and that was a case of 2 of them were phenomenal team fighters, Zamulek being the other one, and they would constantly come back on that. And a lot of the times, Dsyre remind me of that potential they have there. So if the team makes it out of groups, they get stronger the further into the tournament they go. Right? Zamulek will never feel off on that. I do question Slowq in that capacity, because where Slowq is a really, really strong talent himself, he can tilt. Like, he can tilt a bit if things aren't necessarily going really, really well in early phase. But he has been, like, when it came to game 4 or 5, he was that rock, right? Like, when Urgot is, like, 7-1, absolutely fisting top lane, and then it comes to team fights, like, he was not the one who blinked, right? Like, if anything, Odie was the guy that blinked. When he got charmed in on that mid lane fight, it's like seared into my head, right? But Slowq understands his conditions so well in fights, he's able to make it work. So long as the opponents aren't playing like completely perfectly, and I'll tell you this right now, no EMEA Masters team is. So there is always that possibility of being able to find those fights, and if anyone would, it is those 2 players. 100% it is those 2 players.
Okay, so Dsyre has the players that better fit the team fight of a game, as far as I understand. And one thing that I'm interested in it is the meta, the strategic meta of the EMEA Masters that maybe you expect will be about team fights, or maybe with the next patches will be more a slower, a kind of slower game or slower timing in the game. What do you expect?
I think will
be the meta?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like, if the game is slow, it doesn't necessarily mean it's anti-team fights. But I do have to say, I don't have a full, like, I haven't gone over 14-7 yet, Like the finals I just did was 14-5. I typically don't go over the patch until after the last patch has left competitive, and that's just happened. So I'm at a loss if there are significant changes, but I doubt that there is a significant meta change such that we're looking at anything less than tanks are a big deal, which is what we're on now, right, on 14-5, and as an offshoot of that, the meta is leading to Kog'Maw via Jinx, right?
Yeah.
It's always.
I saw your tweet today when you say, "Hey guys, Kog'Maw exists."
Yes, I mean,
in a Jinx World.
G2 are normally the team that end up figuring it out. But like there's a delay. There's like a brain lag until people realize it. But for me, that still continues to be the meta. And the other metas that you need to take into account to combat Jinx metas is basically everything Kog'Maw is, which is an artillery mage, ranged engage, ranged DPS, all this sort of thing. Everything I just said is encapsulated in one champion, Aurelion Sol, which has become big meta. You guys actually pioneered the Aurelion Sol Jinx composition that G2 ended up using, right?
Yes.
That debuted in the Italian League Grand Finals, and then G2 clearly, because they watched Italian League Grand Finals, they nicked it from there. It has become a big thing in solo queue though. Like, I was doing a lot of solo queue watching this week on stream, and Aurelion Sol Jinx was like permanently locked in. So this is like the thing right now. On the live patch.
Aurelion Sol or Jinx are worth a ban, or yes. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're going to build a full anti-Jinx comp, yes, they're worth a ban. And I'm not even sure what a full anti-Aurelion Sol comp would look like other than pick Fizz. That's the only thing I can think of that annihilates both of those particular champions, but that also requires certain other conditions as well to occur. So for me, it's about ranged DPS, ranged engage. These are the things that matter. Tristana should be a really, really big factor. Jinx is going to be the biggest one, and everything is going to be a response to that until everyone figures out Kog'Maw is completely busted, and we arrive right back at the start again, eventually. Like, I don't view Aphelios as a good counter into Jinx unless you have something like Tristana mid lane or Aurelion Sol, or something that can be the range DPS match later, because otherwise you will be in a position where Jinx can touch you, but you can't touch Jinx.
It's very risky move then.
Yes. Like, very, very strong map play can maybe do it. Eintracht Spandau did that in game 2 today. They had the Talia Jarvan composition, and the Talia can technically isolate the Jinx, but what mattered was they played really heavy to sides, and then they kept playing around the map. But I'd expect Matchcode to be able to do that before Dsyre can do that, right? So maybe Matchcode tried to do the map option to Jinx. My opinion, though, and Eintracht Spandau after that game did this, just ban Jinx if you don't have like a full comp into it. That would look like something like Ornn, Zac, Tristana. You can go Aphelios now if you want, and like Leona, right? That's ranged engage, which means an engager doesn't put your body into Jinx because you want to deny her a reset no matter what. Range DPS match with Tristana and a better 2v2 on bot lane. So that's like the most likely thing.
Someone who can go exactly on Jinx, on the enemy Jinx to stop her.
Well, if you do that, you probably just give her a reset. If the rest of your team can't follow up on it, right? That's the problem.
Yes.
Jinx is, when it comes
everyone must follow, unless it's not worth.
So if I am a Jinx, right, what I want is a reset composition, right? And reset compositions need 3 specific things. They need displacement, lockdown, and burst, right? Because that gets you your reset. So Jinx is often paired with Gragas, right? Say I have a Gragas and I have a Maokai, I have my displacement, I have my lockdown, I have, honestly, Gragas is honestly displacement, lockdown, and burst, right? But I have all of that, right? Lissandra with a Gragas with an AD jungler has also been a very common thing, right? This kind of stuff gives you all of those. In that, it's very unlikely I get to just dive to Jinx, right? Like, I'm gonna dive through a Gragas, through a Lissandra, and expect my team to be there? Probably unlikely. Which is why I really emphasize you need ranged engage, right? Because otherwise you're doing the isolation for the Jinx. You're doing it for the Jinx, and the lockdown will come immediately, and that's just a reset for the Jinx, and now the whole team fight is lost. So Ornn, 10 million miles away, engages on you, right? Leona, 10 million miles away, engages on you. Doesn't have to put her body in, right? You can do follow-up if you have the Ornn there. Zack's the exception, because if Zack has passive, he can jump on your face, and he can displace you, right? So Zack is a little bit of an exception.
Because Zack buys time for his team to reach him on the enemies.
Like, I love Xerath with these sorts of things as well. Xerath, Vel'Koz, all this sort of stuff, that can follow up those kinds of engages without ever having to be on top of Jinx. Tristana as well. I think Tristana to me is the quintessential anti-Jinx thing. Maybe not necessarily in bot lane, but if I have a Tristana mid, she will reach the levels where she outranges Jinx in these particular circumstances. I have no idea how the interview became a discussion on Jinx, but that will be like, she is
because we are in a Jinx world. We live in a Jinx world.
We live in a Jinx world. True. Every grand finals had to rediscover that on the first game. Like today, both grand finals today, the Greek League and the Prime League, game 1, Jinx got a pentakill into winning the game. Both of them. Every finals does this. Your finals did this. TCL did this. They all have to wake up and accept it's a Jinx world until you slam Kog'Maw, because Kog'Maw is ranged DPS match, better 2v2, and my lord, he's just gonna damage Jinx the whole game without Jinx being able to do anything, man. He's everything. He's the whole shebang. He is the quintessential anti-Jinx.
But we haven't seen Kog'Maw so much. Maybe I guess because there aren't lots of players that knows how to play Kog'Maw. Maybe it's not that hard, but
is W up? If so, you can play job time.
Exactly. Yes. So, Michael, last question. And I will let you finish that. I hope fantastic wine, amazing wine. Definitely. Okay. I'm really happy. So, I mean, I would add next time carbonara when?
Oh, yes. I mean, I am thinking of doing that if it ever comes to like an elimination game for the Italians, like do the carbonara on that particular day.
I remember.
We'll see. I definitely am planning to do carbonara. I actually have things prepared for like every region. For the EU Masters streams, for the EMEA Masters streams.
Did you try the in a sort of other versions of carbonara, amatriciana, cacio e pepe?
Cacio e pepe I actually do all the time on stream.
Okay.
That's actually like it's become a bit of a cheat code for me because it's actually really easy to get your values done with it in terms of like carbs versus protein versus fat. You can just adjust the amount of cheese that you're using, and obviously the amount of pasta and still get really good consistency. I'm very proud though, because everyone keeps asking me like what kind of method I'm using for the cacio e pepe, to like make sure that I don't mess up the sauce and make it stringy or anything. And I've never used anything but water. I'm just really, really good at knowing when the heat is enough to make sure that I create the sauce itself and not get stringy. I'm really, really proud of being able to do that consistently.
I don't know how that process is called in English. We in Italy call that a bagnomaria. It's kind of
wait, a Gran Maria?
A bagno,
okay.
Like washing.
Sure.
But I don't know in English.
Well, there's a consistency in like almost all Italian pasta dishes where it seems to be that the purpose of that
sort of cream.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's like a cream there, but like what I'm trying to get at is that, and this is for me the beautiful part of like Italian pasta dishes. Like Italian pasta dishes are, at their base, they are a dish to make the maximum use of the leftovers from the previous day. They're an economic dish.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's Italian. It's a pure cuisine for necessary.
But in this, you know, you have a traditional recipe if the whole recipe can be done on one stove and using the stove one time.
Yes.
This is like the cacio e pepe is the perfect example. You use the stove exactly once, which is to heat the pasta, and then you use the heat from heating the pasta to create the sauce and to do everything else. It's only done on that. You do not use a second stove. You do not use a second pan. It is as minimalist as possible.
And one fire.
Yes, one fire, one time, as minimal as we can. It is as economical as humanly possible. If you have an elaborate recipe for an Italian pasta dish, it's not a traditional authentic one, because those are, how can we get maximum usage out of this stove and whatever we had in the leftovers for that day, right?
Yes.
And those leftovers region it, right? Like if you had this kind of leftover, you're from this region, so carbonara or Rome or whatever, right? Or Bologna for bolognese, right? Like it's whatever you had more likely to have there because whatever the agriculture of the time had there, right? But getting as much use from one heating of the stove as you can, that is the quintessential Italian thing. And it's such a challenge to try to get as much use out of it as possible. And I love it, because when I approached Italian cooking, I approached it from the historical perspective. I'm a massive history nerd, and learning about why bolognese uses like 10% guanciale, X amount of pancetta, and then X amount of beef is really interesting. The actual economy of the time when it came to the meat trade, and therefore the main meal they were having the previous day, that would turn into bolognese the next day. That's as fascinating to me as actually learning to do the bolognese itself, you know?
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's so amazing. I really do encourage everyone to look into it.
Yeah, Italian cuisine is something weird, amazing at the same time. It's something that
you made art out of struggle, which I think
Yes.
all art is at the end of the day. But for you guys, it was so explicit, and it's such a beautiful part and a very crisp part of the culture. And you haven't destroyed it with all of the money that's come in, or all of the like temptations probably to make it something more elaborate than it is. The best Italian chefs always pay respect to those traditional, authentic values that they created it with, right? And it's brilliant. The fact that your country was able to come back from such a major setback in the middle of the 20th century is shown in your food. Like, you can see that history, the comeback of the Italian culture and of the Italian people is in its food. I think that's beautiful. It's so cool.
And pizza, it's the same. It's the same thing.
I need to get more into that. My girlfriend's a big baker, so I keep expecting her to do that. Yeah, she loves all of that stuff. I'm a kind of scared to touch pizza because I'm scared to, like, she will grill me on it. You know?
I've learned to make pizza at home in the two last years because I wanted it. I say now I have to learn how to make pizza at home. It was a long journey because it's not that easy as a person could think, but the result then in the end it's very worth.
Yeah,
maybe next time in streaming. So if an Italian team reach the finals of the EMEA Masters, please pizza.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay,
I'll try doing it on stream for sure.
I hope.
For sure.
So, veteran, thank you very much for your time, for your knowledge, for everything, for everything you are, and
Cheers.
I follow you from several years when you were in the ULCS. I hope, I wish you to come back soon in a major region or as
we'll
coach.
see, we'll see.
I hope.
I'm gonna have some
best.
big announcements soon. I don't know if this interview will be out before those announcements, but like, you'll be seeing a lot more of me this month. That's what I can say for sure.
I'm very happy.
And Eagle is a great player. Look into him.
Thank you very much, veteran. Again, best of luck, and of course, have a great watch on the EMEA Masters. We'll follow you.